Today's lesson will be covering least common multiple and greatest common factor. First, we will be looking at definition. The definition of multiples is a number that can be divided by another number without a remainder. We will be finding the multiples of the number 8 and 12. To get this started, I'm going to ask myself, what is 8 times 1? Which is 8. 8 times 2, 16, times 3, 24, times 4, 32, times 5 is 40, and then 8 times 6 is 48, and then you could continue on. But we're going to stop right there. Now I'm going to find the multiples of 12. 12 times 1 is 12. Times 2, 24, times 3, 36, times 4, 48, times 5, 60, times 6 is 72, and that would continue on as well. Now we're going to look at our multiples, and we are going to find the least common multiple. So the definition of a least common multiple is the smallest number that they both divide evenly into. And if you'll look at your list of numbers, they share 24 the same as well as 48. So they're both common multiples, but we want the least common multiple, which would be the smaller number. So the least common multiple would be 24. Now we're going to look at factors to a number. So the factors of a number is a number that when multiplied by another produces a given number. So we're going to find the factors of 8 and 12. So in essence, the factors of 8 are the numbers that multiply together to give you 8. And that would be 1 times 8 and also 2 times 4. And then the factors of 12 are 1 times 12, 2 times 6, and 3 times 4. And now what we want to find is what the greatest common factor is, which is the largest factor that they have in common. Because again, you can see they have the 1 in common, they have the 2 in common, and the 4 in common. But we want the greatest common factor, which would be the 4. So the greatest common factor of 8 and 12 is 4. This method will work anytime you're looking for the least common multiple or the greatest common factor, but it can sometimes get long and tedious when you're looking at some really large numbers. So we're going to look at a method called the upside down cake method. This is an easy way to find the greatest common factor and the least common multiple without having to list all their multiples and all their factors. So we're going to do it for the same numbers of 8 and 12, and I'm going to show you this method. So we're going to look at 8 and 12, and we draw this line here, and then we're going to ask ourselves, what is a number that will divide into 8 and 12 evenly? And the first one I think of is 4. So now what I'm going to do is take 8 divided by 4, which is 2, and 12 divided by 4, which is 3. And then I'd ask myself what number will go into 2 and 3 evenly. And if it's 1, which is the case here, then we don't have to do any work. At this point then, we have all the material needed in order to find the greatest common factor and the least common multiple. So on the left column, and you can kind of create a G to help you remember that this is the greatest common factor. And the only thing in the left column is the 4. So my greatest common factor of 8 and 12 is 4. Now, for the least common multiple, we're going to create an L through that left column as well as the lowest row. So my least common multiple will include all those numbers, which is 4 times 2 times 3, which is 8 times 3, or 24. And there we have our least common multiple. Now, I want to show you that you can get the same answer even if you do not approach the problem exactly the way as someone else does. When you look at the 8 and the 12, you could have started and said, well, 2 will divide into those both evenly, and you are still correct. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 12 divided by 2 is 6. And then I once again ask myself what number goes into 4 and 6, and 2 does. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. And now the 2 and the 3, the only number they have in common is 1. Therefore, we stop. So I'm going to first find my greatest common factor by drawing a G around the left column. So my greatest common factor is 2 times 2, which is 4. So it's the same answer we got as last time. Then my least common multiple would be the L. So my least common multiple is 2 times 2 times 2 times 3. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 3 is 24. So as you can see, we get the exact same answer even though we approached it differently. Now we're going to look at some examples with a little bit larger numbers, so you can see that it works very well for them as well. So we're going to look at 36 and 48. Now, I automatically quickly recognize that 2 goes into both of those, but again, you could have used 4, and so whatever number you choose, you'd still get the same answer we'll get. 36 divided by 2 is 18, and 48 divided by 2 is 24. And 18 and 24, I go, oh, 6 goes into both of those. So 18 divided by 6 is 3, and 24 divided by 6 is 4. And so once again, we're at a point that 3 and 4, the only number that goes into both of those is 1, so we can stop now. On the left column, I create my G, so my greatest common factor is 2 times 6, which is 12. And then I can, and I might need a little bit more room, so I'm going to come over here to find my least common multiple, and that will be 2 times 6 times 3 times 4 because of my L. And 2 times 6 is 12, 3 times 4 is 12, 12 times 12 is 144. So as you can see, sometimes you encounter larger numbers. We're going to do one more example with some even bigger numbers. This time we're going to find the greatest common factor and the least common multiple of 90 and 120. And I automatically recognize both of these numbers end in a 0. Therefore, I know 10 will divide into both of those. 90 divided by 10 is 9. And 120 divided by 10 is 12. 9 and 12, 3 will go into both of these numbers. So 9 divided by 3 is 3. And 12 divided by 3 is 4. And now that we have the 3 and the 4, 1 is the only number that will go into both of those. So now we can find our greatest common factor by the left column. So my greatest common factor is 10 times 3, which is 30. And now we can go on and find our least common multiple, which will be 10 times 3 times 3 times 4. 10 times 3 is 30. 3 times 4 is 12. And then we're going to need to multiply 30 times 12, and we get the big number of 360. So the greatest common factor of 90 and 120 is 30, and the least common multiple of 90 and 120 is 360. Be sure that you work the problems that were assigned for class tomorrow and come with any questions that you may have.